This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz in Sacramento, joined by Muratsuchi. He is a member of the California State Assembly. He's back. He is a redshirt sophomore, as they call it, elected in 2012, did not return in 2014, but is now back in 2016. So how is it to be back after a 2-year hiatus?
It's great to be back. You know, as we all know, we're living in interesting times now. With all that's going on, not only in California, but in our country. But I'm really happy to be back. You know, I have the experience from my first term. I talk about taking a sabbatical,
right.
You know, where a lot of times you learn the most from taking a little time off.
And let's talk about that, because obviously you had to dig deep to come back. You had lost in 2014 and then came back pretty swimmingly in 2016. So obviously there was some connection that you were able to create. Are you able to tap into concerns of your constituents? What do you think happened? What were their concerns? What are their concerns?
Sure. Well, you know, the best part about losing is that I fully appreciate that is truly a privilege to be able to serve, to be able to represent the South Bay in the California State Legislature. And so my love for the South Bay has only deepened. But you know, the big difference between my past 3 assembly elections, I won in 2012, lost in 2014, won in 2016, was the turnout. And so that is directly tied to voter turnout and, you know, unfortunately voter apathy in 2014. When the turnout is high, you know, I do well. When the turnout is low, often Democrats like myself do not do as well.
Right, you were one of 3 that were successful in 12, not in 14, and now back in 16.
That's
so that really does say a lot. I want to talk about that love that you feel for the South Bay. Because the South Bay in the 90s, while all still beautiful, really struggled a bit. The aerospace industry was hit pretty hard by base closures.
That's right.
I don't live far from the South Bay, so I'm very aware of what happened. South Bay has bounced back beautifully. The entertainment industry has come to the South Bay. Auto is still strong, although that's another conversation. But what we know is the new president has released a budget recently. And his new budget could cause some pain in the South Bay. We don't know what's ultimately going to happen, but let's talk about your concerns with the president's new budget.
Okay. Well, you started to talk about the history of the South Bay, specifically as it relates to aerospace. So with major defense cutbacks in the 90s, with the end of the Cold War, the South Bay took some hard hits. A lot of aerospace engineers and others were being laid off as the major defense contractors, companies like Northrop, Raytheon, Boeing, were cutting down. But you know, one of the bright spots of the president's budget is that he is talking about an increase in defense spending.
Which could help the South Bay, although is the industry still there in a significant way?
The industry is still strong. I mean, the aerospace industry in the state of California continues to be bigger than the agricultural industry overall. It's bigger than the film and entertainment industry. And so much of it is focused in my part of the state, in the South Bay. We've also seen a lot of very hopeful developments in the aerospace industry, not just the major companies like Northrop, Boeing, Raytheon that have been, you know, part of the defense industry for decades, but we're seeing exciting new companies like SpaceX, also in the South Bay. You know, they've went from 0 manufacturing jobs in 2006 to now over 4,000 manufacturing jobs. And
but are there concerns with the president's budget that you have?
So at the same time that the president has talked about increased spending in areas that may help out companies like the aerospace industries in the South Bay, there's also concern that there might be a new round of base realignments or closures. And one of the cornerstones of the aerospace industry, as well as of our California military presence, is the Los Angeles Air Force Base, located in the city of El Segundo. But their impact is clearly much bigger than the city of El Segundo. They are really the backbone of so much of the research and development that takes place in the South Bay. And you know, they're also procurement offices. They're basically purchasing, whether it's space satellites or whether it's cybersecurity. So much of the military activity around which the aerospace companies are based around are focused on the LA Air Force Base.
So what do you do to try to protect the LA Air Force Base? Do you speak with, I think, Ted Lieu? He's the member of Congress who represents that area, but he's a Democrat, so I'm not sure if that would be beneficial in terms of federal support. What do you do?
So we need to make sure that we learn the lessons from the 1990s, from the last big round of base closures. When that happened, California was not prepared. We need to start organizing, showing strong community support, strong regional support, Democrats, Republicans, mayors throughout not only the South Bay but throughout Los Angeles County.
Maybe Dana Rohrabacher, he's just to the south of you. He's a Republican. Do we bring him on board?
Well, we bring anyone on board that we can enlist in order to support the cause.
I want to shift gears, if I may, and speak with you about education.
Oh, okay.
I believe you're chair of the Joint Legislative Audit Committee.
That is correct.
So were you intricately involved in the recent hubbub over the UC audit that came through the state auditor's office?
That's right. So as the chair of the Legislative Audit Committee, one of our powers that our committee has is to approve audits of public entities, any organization that receives state funding in the state of California. The University of California is one of the crown jewels of the state of California. We have world-class universities, among the best universities, not only in our country, but in the entire world.
So along those lines, though, there was a lot of ink spilled over this $175 million that was purportedly found. But in retrospect, even the state auditor, Elaine Howell, seemed to backtrack a bit and suggest, we don't know that there were nefarious motives or intent. And so I'm wondering if we spilled and got all worked up over something that, there are issues, but it's not what was presented initially, or am I misreading that?
So the main point that I want to emphasize is that we need to support the University of California, but at the same time, we need to make sure that they're spending taxpayer dollars wisely and in a transparent manner. What the state auditor found was not only that the Office of the President was sitting on a $175 million undisclosed reserve, but that there was shoddy oversight on the part of the Board of Regents. They just were not doing their job in terms of ensuring that that state dollars are being well spent. There was evidence of extravagant employee salaries and benefits of these parties, of travel expenses.
But at the same time, so the governor in his May revise has said he wants to withhold $50 million from the UC as a result of the audit, and he wants them to agree to certain reforms. In our final moments, what do you make of that?
So what I make of that is that we want to continue to support the University of California, but on the condition that they institute the necessary reforms, the fiscal management reforms, the oversight reforms, so that the University of California and specifically the Office of the President operates in a more transparent and accountable
I'd love
manner.
to have you back to talk about the UC, because like you said, it is a crown jewel. We want it to operate most efficiently. His name is Al Muratsuchi. He is a member of the California State Assembly representing the South Bay of California. My name is Brad Pomerantz in Sacramento. This is Local Edition.